Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku was Shigaraki's obsession part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story, NellaJaySteel Wattpad. So let's start the video. Deku. You screamed as you flew out into the middle of the battlefield. Deku's black WHP being the most prominent power at the moment as Shigaraki was pulled into the air. Last chance to not have any more spoilers than that. Final warning disclaimer: some events may be excluded / changed / altered for the sake of the story. What are you doing here? Where's Ida, extra? Bakugo yelled from below you, just as beat up as Deku was looking. He's gathering a few more pros before he heads this way. We realized the decay wave was from Shigaraki. I can fly, Ida can't. He sent me here first. You landed by Bakugo and tried to help him, but he pushed you away. You need to gather more heroes. Anyone that's not fighting Nomu or helping survivors. Go Y/H/N. Endeavor yelled at you. You stared at Endeavor for a moment before nodding and taking off into the air. You knew it was a bad idea to leave, but what could you do? You started in the middle of this year at UA, and that was only because of how quickly you passed your licensing exam. This work/study. This work/study was just coincidence. Pure coincidence that this was your first real crisis as a young adult hero. Spoilers ahead, you spent what felt like 4 hours searching for help. Over and over and over again asking for help, but only finding injured heroes, work/study students, rescue workers, or beyond hurt pros. You were just about to land at another group of heroes when you saw Ryukyu, the dragon hero, out of the corner of your eye. You took off without even thinking. Ryukyu never struggled. Not in her dragon form. Shigaraki must have gotten away from Deku. And if Shigaraki got away from Deku, he was after someone else. Think. Who was he after? Who was there? Lock, Endeavor, Shoto, Bakugo, Eraserhead, Water Dude, Nijire, Tooth. Eraser. You pulled 4 indigo feathers from your wings. You put a special suave on them that Recovery Girl helped you develop when you were young. Best grandma ever, right? They formed together as you arrived on scene. You took 3 more feathers from your wings when you saw the red dot connect to Aizawa's leg. It didn't register what it was until Aizawa severed his own leg from his body. You didn't even think. You landed HRD on the ground in front of Aizawa. Lock was already working on a tourniquet as you took sterile cloth from your medical bag and wiped the BLD off the open wound. Aizawa's pained yelling being absent in your mind as you worked. As you secured the 4 swathed indigo feathers on the amputation, you heard Ryukyu, Bakugo, and Deku's voices blending together. Y/H/N, Ryukyu yelling. Y/N, Deku and Bakugo screaming. You turned just in time to be face to face with Shigaraki, who had lunged out of Ryukyu's grip and towards Aizawa as his target. Your indigo feathers stiffened into shields, blocking Shigaraki's sight to Aizawa, Lock, and the water faucet man. Don't touch, Y/N. You heard Deku scream again. You would have thought by now Deku knew you could protect yourself, but then again you had only been dating for a couple months. Mostly in secret until a week ago. Regardless. You had a crusty, dusty, white-haired, chapped-lipped chickenpox in-person mozzarella cheese looking fool to take care of. You grabbed the tattered red caps on his shoulders by either side as his hands went around your head and pulled his face down quickly to connect with your knee. As soon as he recoiled back, your wings came together and flung him backwards. He fell back nearly a football field's length away as you followed suit. Glancing as Deku's worried face as you flew past. Shigaraki raised up as your wings stretched to twice your size, staring as he sat up, one arm holding him up and the other on his raised knee as his red eyes stared at you. Tamura Shigaraki. I shouldn't be surprised people know my name by now, but it still catches me off guard. Shigaraki looked off before making eye contact with you again. You need to turn yourself over to the pro heroes of Japan. You'll be detained and questioned, then sentenced to the fullest extent. As you continued to speak, reciting the lines your idol drilled into your head, you realized by the grin trailing across Shigaraki's face that the words were pointless. You saw his cape catch the wind, but before you could react and fly back or into the air, Shigaraki's hands were gripping the joints of your hips. Your wings flapped like a bird trapped in a cage. You must be a little more new than I originally thought. Shigaraki spoke close to your face as you kicked weakly, losing feeling in your legs as you heard Deku screaming. "Leave her be, Shigaraki. Leave her alone." His voice yelled in a trembling tone. "You want one for all? Come get it. Shigaraki." Deku was too badly injured to move, broken arms and legs. Bakugo was unconscious by Deku bleeding badly. Ryukyu and NellaJaySteel had passed out from their injuries. You didn't know where Ito was, or where Shoto and 𝗵𝗃 was. 𝗏𝗏 Water Gun Man could only watch helplessly as they cared for a passed-out Aizawa. This may as well have been a one-on-one. You and Shigaraki. You were trying to leverage your feet on Shigaraki's legs, but you couldn't do it. Your wings were back to normal size and softness as you tried to take flight, flapping your wings desperately. Your hands gripping Shigaraki's as his thumbs pressed into your hip joints. You couldn't look him in the eye. "Let me the F go. You goddamn dried fruitcake." You screamed as Shigaraki's laugh pierced your ears. "Ah, does that hurt?" "I don't know who's hurting more." Shigaraki squeezed harder, causing you to lean your head back and gasp in pain, squeaking as your wings stiffened and trembled. Shigaraki's thumbs pressed harder into the joints of your hips as you screamed and gripped his hands. It was all you could do to relieve pressure from his grip. "I don't know who's hurting more," Shigaraki said through a laugh. You looked at Shigaraki as he grinned, looking at Deku, whose eyes were tearing up as he laid helpless on his stomach. "Izuku Midoriya." You breathed heavily as you screamed out as loud as you could, getting all the stress and fear out as you released Shigaraki's hands. His quirks slowly decaying your suit, then your undergarments, and starting on your skin. You grabbed his hair as he looked at Deku, breathing through the pain as you saw 𝗵𝗃 and Shoto running towards you and Shigaraki. Shigaraki looked at you through his hair but didn't register what was happening until both your feet planted firmly on his upper thighs, kicking off as your wings pulled you into the air. Holding his hair as tightly as you could, you felt his hands let go. You flew as high as your tired wings would take you, threw him up into the air, rolled a wing up, punched him high into the air, and then, "Deku, get him higher." No. 𝗵𝗃 screamed as Deku used black WHP from his mouth and threw himself into the air, passing you in momentum and grabbing Shigaraki and throwing him as high as he could get him. Shoto launched 𝗵𝗃 into the air, looking at you as you caught Deku. "Get out of the way. Grab Bakugo and the others." Shoto screamed as 𝗵𝗃 flew towards Shigaraki. Plus Ultra. 𝗵𝗃 began as you flew down, not even thinking about how tired your wings were, and grabbing Bakugo and flying in front of Aizawa, 𝗏𝗏, and Water Gun Man. You wings stiffening like sheets of thick metal and growing in height and length as they made a ballistics wall. Rip-off ballistic feather wall. Screamed as a sort of confirmation to 𝗵𝗃 as he grabbed Shigaraki in a tight hug. Prominence burn. 𝗵𝗃 yelled loudly as his flames overtook his and Shigaraki's body, burning bright as Shoto barely made it behind the wall, making ice to keep all of you cool as you took care of Deku, Bakugo, and even Shoto's wounds before yours, despite Deku insisting you take care of yourself first. "I'm fine, Deku." You continued as sweat dripped down your forehead, your stubby wings flapping just a bit to cool you down. "You're not fine." Shigaraki grabbed you. He could have you coved Deku's mouth. "We don't have time to think about that. We have to defeat him. You know that." You took your hand away and smiled. "Now if you want to help me," you said as you placed your leftover feathers on your decayed wounds. "Smile. Your smile always cheers me up. Better than all-night smile." You laughed a bit. Deku stared at you for a moment before smiling back. You hugged him despite him not being able to hug you back and looked out from behind the wall once the light subsided. As Shigaraki laid charred on the ground, you let your guard down more than you should have. 𝗵𝗃 and Shoto were talking when you heard it. Thundering footsteps coming this way. Before you could warn anyone, Gigantomachia had already stopped feet away from the group and picked up Shigaraki. Mr. Compress, Dabi, and Spinner all peeking from behind the huge boulders on his back. Shoto and 𝗵𝗃 were immediately met with fire from Dabi, pulling them from the group. Spinner went to Shigaraki and you flew with was wings you had that way despite Deku's protesting. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 told you it was a bad idea too, but with everyone else injured or busy you didn't think you had much of a choice. You didn't realize Mr. Compress had seen your fly towards them. By the time you heard Mr. Compress speak, you looked over to see 2 blue marbles coming towards your face. You gasped and tried to fly out of the way, but by that time the objects were uncompressed and 2 large pieces of steel pinned you to the ground beneath the hand that held Shigaraki. Mr. Compress jumped down and stared to talk until a feather wiggled out from under your back and knocked his mask off. Irritated, he kicked you hard in the head and the last thing you heard was Deku's worried screams. You woke up in intervals. You say 𝐔𝐬𝐫𝐿 fall unconscious after Endeavor's last hit. Shigaraki escaping on the back of something, Deku crawling over to you. Him crying. You saw the sky. Deku passed out beside you. You heard Ida. You heard Shoto. You felt the weight lifted off you. Being lifted onto a stretcher as you whined out for Deku. You opened your eyes in the back of the ambulance, looking at the EMS team as they worried for their futures through your red eyes. You woke up again in a hallway, lights passing over your head as you coughed. People around you, doctors may screaming as you realized BLD was filling your lungs. So much pain. Oh, so much pain. You missed Deku. Plus God, he must be so worried. You shot up in the bed, breathing hard as you pulled an oxygen mask from your mouth. A sharp pain shot around your hips and up your back. Your wings stiffened with pain as you grabbed your hips. FY/N. Ida's voice called out as you looked at the hospital room door. He and a few other classmates walked in. A nurse helped you lay back in bed as you looked out the window. The world seemed duller, void of hope as you stared out the window. Is Deku and everyone okay? You asked as you looked at Ida. Only when you say his, Momo, and Shoto's eyes did you realize the toll the Paranormal Liberation War really took on Japan. No one can find Deku. We didn't even think you'd wake up. Ida looked off, unable to even look at you from having a sense of shame. What? You had mild decay at your hips. A concussion, internal bleeding, a fractured leg, fractured collarbone, your wings were crushed, and 2 broken ribs. Momo said in a sad monotone voice. No, not me. Where is Deku? What happened? You snapped at them. Kirishima sighed. Deku left after the doctors told him you may not wake up. They had to put you in a medically induced coma. See coma. You sat up slowly and looked at them. For how long? It's been 2 weeks, Ida said reluctantly. 2 weeks. You started breathing heavy again. When did Deku? A week and a half ago, Kirishima said sadly. Who all died? That has to be the only reason that Deku left. He's overwhelmed, traumatized, right? Momo swallowed. Midnight crust, eel boy, majestic, she started to cry as your face sunk with depression. Native, disarray, Froyo, tailored along with more than 160 other smaller heroes. Oh my God, hundreds were displaced. Some dying in the decay wave of the aftermath of the decay wave. Endeavor, Hawks, Fat Gum, Best Jeanist, Kirishima looked down. All are in critical condition. Hawks and Fat Gum are improving but slowly. All of this because of Shigaraki. You swallowed. They nodded as you covered your mouth and began to cry. Deku had to have been hurting so bad. You didn't realize how much you loved Midoriya until you couldn't even see him, let alone talk to him. It had been a week since you woke up from the 2-week-long coma, and you hadn't even heard Deku's name since Ida and the others told you about his disappearance. You sat in your hospital bed most days, laying awake during the nights, and staring out the window in the evenings. Y/N. You heard someone call your name from the room door. You looked over to see All Might, eyes sunken as you bolted from your bed, falling to your knees trying to get to him as you spoke. Is Deku okay? Why do you look upset? Hey, All Might helped you up back on the bed and smiled. Just tired. But I'm okay. Young Midoriya is okay too. He's just going through a lot. Where is he? I don't exactly know right now. All Might rubbed his neck. What do you mean? You looked up at him. I mean, well, All Might sighed. It's bad. Y/N. He's beyond traumatized, especially after seeing you get hurt. Then young Bakugo, All Might shook his head in disapproval. It's just all been so much for young Midoriya. You covered your face and began to cry. I should have just focused on escaping with him, but sure Shigaraki, you whined behind your hands as you doubled over. 𝗧𝗏𝗏, All Might put a hand on your head. This isn't your fault. I was on the recovery team, All Might. You cried loudly. I hadn't been trained in combat yet. I should have just ran with Midoriya, but he would have never forgiven me. All Might hugged you. No, 𝗧𝗏𝗏. Young heroes like yourselves are not to blame. Please do not hold this regret. You have tried the best you can as a young rising hero. 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏. 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏. A reporter cornered you at the exit of the hospital. Is it true the young hero Deku is now a wanted vigilante? Is Izuku Midoriya working with the villains? Another reporter yelled, shoving a microphone in your face. Why has All Might been seen with the young vigilante? A third yelled. Cameras flashed in your face as you looked at everyone. Thinking back to all the times Deku had saved everyone without them even realizing it because it was removed from official reports. You grit your teeth, anger boiling inside you as you grabbed one of the microphones. Izuku Midoriya is one of the most amazing people I know. There have been many times where he and he alone has saved each and every one of us. You screamed at them. If you want to know if Deku is working for villains or if he is a vigilante, then watch him. Pay attention to the actions he takes and stop hating heroes for trying their best while ignoring their own mental health. You shoved the microphone back into the chest of the news anchor you stole it from and shoved through the crowd, tears in your eyes as they continued asking and asking like seagulls on a beach demanding a hot dog you just bought from a pier hot dog stand. You walked home, running in some cases to get away from the press. When you got in your apartment, you broke down crying yet again. Your heart hurting with Deku's absence. Spinner opened a pack of bandages as 𝗬𝗵𝗃 poured the three of them a drink. Whiskey on the rocks. Shigaraki sat uncomfortable on a stool as he groaned. None of that went as planned. I told the doctor not to start my upgrades in that horrid hospital. You should have retreated when you had the chance. 𝗬𝗵𝗃 replied as he sat the whiskey in front of Shigaraki. If All For One and Compress hadn't stepped in while you were unconscious, we'd all be detained right now. Spinner sighed as he began to bandage Shigaraki's arm. 𝗬𝗵𝗃 turning on the TV, flipping through channels. 𝗬𝗵𝗃, go back to the news channel. The one with the blossoming hero, 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏, Shigaraki demanded as he sipped the whiskey. But 𝗬𝗵𝗃 looked as Shigaraki. Shigaraki yelled as he slammed his drink down. But don't pop a BLD vessel. 𝗬𝗵𝗃 scoffed as he switched it back. Working from the villains, or if he is a vigilante, watch him. Pay attention to the actions he takes and stop hating heroes for trying their best while ignoring their own mental health. Your voice echoed over a TV screen as Spinner wrapped Shigaraki in bandages. A twisted grin came across Shigaraki's burnt but slowly healing face. I think I just found out how to break Izuku Midoriya and force him to hand over One For All. With that string bean with feathers. 𝗬𝗵𝗃 looked as Shigaraki. What could she possibly be used for other than a feather pillow? Spinner looked at him. Think about it, you imbeciles. Shigaraki paused the news on a clear image of you. Izuku Midoriya was very unhappy, no smile to be seen, when I hurt Bakugo. But he was crying and screaming, panicking even when I touched one of her feathers. Shigaraki laughed. Plus, you're gonna try to lure him here? 𝗬𝗵𝗃 asked with a raised eyebrow. We could make an example out of her. Spinner said, crossing his arms. We're gonna break his heart. Then we're gonna kill her in front of him. Shigaraki grinned, looking back at them. Over the course of 3 months you tried everything you could to talk to Deku. You chased him down until you were exhausted, cornered him and tried to show him you were okay, and even sent letters to him through All Might. Nothing worked. He always ran. You trained more and more every day at UA High. Combat was your main course. With Hawk's help you were doing great. Tokiyami was a major help too. Dark Shadow acted like a villain, Hawks acted as backup, and Tokiyami cheered you on. Some days you fought all 3 of them, and although at the start you were an amateur, you eventually got to the point with support gear and Grandma's support that you could defeat all 3 of them at their full strength. Are you ready, 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏? This mission is going to be your hardest one yet. Hawks said over the earpiece. What are you assigning me to? You replied as you flew over the city. Me and Tokiyami are chasing the criminals. One has a flying ability, so, hey. Throwing your comrades is so lame, dude. Hawks scoffed as he got back on track. Sorry, we're after them. Just go back to Site 1 and see if you can round up the other two villains. One has red hair and the other has a pink mohawk. Understood, Hawks. See you back at the agency. You ended the call as you turned your wings to fly towards the site of the crime. After a few minutes, you spotted the red-haired criminals. The pink mohawk villain having already been called in as caught. Hey, villain! You yelled out as you flew down towards him. You took 3 feathers and stiffened them, throwing them like daggers. 2 hit the criminal and he fell to the ground, seemingly pinned to the concrete until you landed, straddling him as he faced the ground. Silent and unmoving. Okay, the villain. Time to head to the prison, you said as you reached down to grab his wrists. Just as you came in contact with his skin, blue sparks faintly appeared. Like fire starting. You glanced up at the man's face, seeing burnt stapled together skin. W, you mumbled as blue flames engulfed his body. The red wig burning as you flew back as quickly as you could. Your hand receiving at least first-degree burns. F. 𝗬𝗵𝗵 stood up and grinned as he turned to look at you. Almost got you, 𝐻/N. Chills filled your body as he spoke your name. You backed up as you went to touch your earpiece. 𝗬𝗵𝗵 threw a hand up, sending flames right by your head, burning the side of your face. The earpiece began to melt and sizzle in your ear, causing you to sweat it out as you stepped back, turning your back to 𝗬𝗵𝗵, and putting your wings up as shields. God damn it. Want to do this the easy way. You heard 𝗬𝗵𝗵's footsteps move towards you as you took out the ointment you had on your utility belt and rubbed it on your face. The smell of burnt hair lingering around your nose. Or the hard way, hero. 𝗬𝗵𝗵 yelled as you saw 𝗬𝗵𝗵's shadow vault over your wings. You looked up, seeing him fly over, and softened your wings enough to planted them on the ground and throw yourself back as 𝗬𝗵𝗵's flames caught the edges of your wings. You barely landed on your feet as you faced 𝗬𝗵𝗵, who landed flawlessly and turned to face you. You flapped your wings aggressively, trying to put the fire out. You winged heroes. You think you're so good and courageous until someone with flames comes and ruins your party. 𝗬𝗵𝗵 clicked his tongue and laughed as he locked eyes with you. You swallowed as you accessed your situation. Looking above you, you could fly, but we both know my flames would reach your wings before you got a chance to harden them into that precious shield. 𝗬𝗵𝗵's voice bled into your thoughts as you looked back at him. I thought you'd be running away with your you sad abused dog. You scoffed as 𝗬𝗵𝗵 laughed. Oh, that's a good one, he said as he ran his fingers through his white hair. Oh man, you're gonna be so much fun. Maybe Shigaraki was right about taking you. It'll be worth it, 𝗬𝗵𝗵 said as he lunged towards you. You backed up, taking 2 wings you had grabbed when you jumped back the last time and tying 2 flashbangs on them. You pulled the pins and turned around. Needle flash feathers. You screamed as the flash went off. You used your wings like a porcupine and stiffened them, raising each feather and releasing them towards 𝗬𝗵𝗵 like needles from a porcupine's back. 𝗬𝗵𝗵 scoffed as he jumped back and burned the feathers up, eyes closed as he got knocked by a couple of the feathers. You stood up, not realizing he wasn't more hurt from the amount of smoke filling the alleyway. You ran through the smoke, trying to get out of the narrow space to better escape. You felt a hand go around your throat and slam you into the wall. You're like a caged bird, flapping your wings and trying to get away from the inevitable. 𝗬𝗵𝗵's hand began to heat up as you flapped your wings aggressively yet again, kicking as he lifted you off the front. Let go of me. You screamed as 𝗬𝗵𝗵 burnt your feathers down even more to half their length and continued to let them burn as you screamed out in pain. We can't have you screaming that loud now. I have to get you back to Shigaraki in one piece, but he never said anything about you being broken. 𝗬𝗵𝗵 grinned as his hand came off your neck, went around your mouth, pulled your head forward, and was about to slam your head into the brick wall of the alley. Dark shadow. Tokiyami's dark shadow flew in at the last second and grabbed you from 𝗬𝗵𝗵's grip as Hawk's feathers began to pelt him. 𝗬𝗵𝗵 groaned with irritation as he opened a door hidden in the alley and disappeared. Coward, attacking my work/study student. Hawks screamed as Dark Shadow put the fire out on your wings as he laid you on the ground. Y/H/N, are you okay? Tokiyami asked as he looked at you. You nodded, tearing up as Hawks walked over to you both. I couldn't he, you began to breath heavily, a panic attack taking over your mind as Hawks kneeled down and put his hands on your shoulders. No one expected him to be here, Y/N. I swear. I wouldn't have sent you off by yourself if I had known, he reassured you as he looked at your wings. You covered your face as you began to cry. Hawks and Tokiyami escorted you to Recovery Girl. She was shocked seeing you and had you sit as she calmed you down, giving you a cookie she had freshly baked as Hawks and Grandma talked. Dabi said Shigaraki wanted you. Hawks said in a shocked tone as you nodded. It had been about 2 days since the attack and attempted kidnapping. I don't know why I was under the assumption that no one even knew about me. I'm a rising hero. I wasn't even announced in the police reports or news stories. No one knew my real name until Dabi spoke it. You said with worry as you rubbed your face. You need escorts back and forth from school and any activities outside UA's grounds. Hawks said as a worried expression crossed his face while he covered his mouth with his hand. What? You looked at him. Like 24/7. You asked as he looked at you with the dumbest expression on his face. No, just when you sleep. He said sarcastically. Yes, 24/7. Do you want to be kidnapped by the mass-murdering villain? Hawks said loudly as he slapped his hand against his face. No. Why You sighed heavily and covered your head, looking down the building of UA as you and Hawks sat on the edge of the roof. Look. Hawks tapped your shoulder. You looked up and turned to Hawks? I went up against Dabi. The only reason you didn't get burned as badly as I did during the war is because you have trained your wings to harden and do more things than I could ever hope to. Hawks crossed his arms. That doesn't mean he can't hurt you though. He underestimated you this time. Next time he won't. Plus, why you're right, you nodded as you sighed heavily. Who is going to be my buddy? Do you even have anyone in mind? You looked at Hawks as he grinned. I do actually. What do you think about Monoma Nito? Monoma. It's been a week since Monoma was assigned to you as your buddy both to protect you and possibly just to annoy you. Monoma wasn't Hawks' first choice according to the bird brain himself. Class 1A was still recovering or had problems or work/studies of their own to do, so you got stuck with the one person in Class 1B that quit his work/study after the Paranormal Liberation War because Class 1A once again tried to one-up 1B to feel superior. Thanks to their weak efforts, countless pros died. I don't have time to waste on useless work/studies as they mourn. So now you were stuck with the egotistical maniac as he talked day in and day out about you being a stray that Class 1A just had to adopt into their class just before the war. Deku running off because he couldn't protect his poor puppy. Class 1A's stray needing a buddy to escort them everywhere they go. I guess your class isn't that great after all. Monoma's laugh rang out as you walked out of the school bathroom. That's the 4th time this week, Monoma. Starts to lose its sting after a while. You said as you stretched and walked down the hallway. Maybe you're right, but at least my class didn't have to adopt a puppy to make up for their lack of strength. He laughed again. You groaned as you walked out of the school gates and towards town. If I make it through this bullshit, you mumbled as Monoma walked up beside you. What's that? Is the puppy of Class 1A showing its teeth? Monoma grinned. Oh my god, do you ever just shut up? You yelled as you smacked him with one of your wings. He stumbled and ran back up to you. Where are we even going, pup? Stop calling me pup. You growled. Puppy ma dash. Monoma was cut off by your wing thwacking him again. We're heading to town to do patrol. Hawks is letting me do a patrol day so I don't have to stay cooped up anymore. You said as you crossed your arms walking. Cooped up? You've ran to town and all other surrounding areas of UA High every other day. Monoma said as he looked at you. Yeah, well, Hawks doesn't know that, so, you said quietly as you walked through the town. Hours of walking and a couple lunch breaks in between that. The sun begins to set as you and Monoma enter the lesser civilian populated area of town. So, pup, Monoma started as you turned and looked at him. Monoma. I swear to God you have about 4 more times to call me that and I will throw you into the air so far you'll throw up last week's lunch. You said with an irritated smile. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗧 stopped and looked behind you, eyes wide as froze. 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐫𝐞, he said confused. What? You raised an eyebrow and looked behind you to see an unconscious 𝗵𝗵𝗧 tied up at the end of the alleyway behind you. You didn't even think about why he was there or who put him there. You immediately ran down the alley, 𝗵𝗲 close behind you as you got to 𝗵𝗵𝗧. 𝗵𝗵𝗧! You yelled as you grabbed him. Wake up. You smacked the sides of his face. 𝗵𝗵𝗧, are you okay? Where's 𝐎𝐸𝐽? What happened? You yelled in a panic as 𝗵𝗵𝗧 barely came back to the living world. That's when you noticed the smell of burning flesh. Burning hair. You noticed the smoke rising off of 𝗵𝗵𝗧 as you pulled him into you and looked at his back, burn marks and cuts marked from his lower back to his shoulders. Why/N, 𝗵𝗵𝗧 mumbled. 𝐔𝐬𝐝, he spoke weakly. 𝗵𝗲, call into Hawks. Tell 𝐻𝗪. You laid 𝗵𝗵𝗧 on his side as you heard a familiar voice speak from behind you. What's wrong, 𝗵? Where's all that fight you had a few weeks ago? 𝗬𝗵's voice rang out in the confined walls of the alley. You swallowed hard as you gripped onto 𝗵𝗵𝗧. His barely conscious eyes looking at you as he spoke quietly. Run leave, 𝗵𝗃. 𝗬𝗵's voice grew closer as you swallowed hard and looked at 𝗵𝗵𝗧. What would Deku do? You smiled at 𝗵𝗵𝗧, reaching slowly behind you as you ripped some feathers gently from your wings and attached them to him. You stood up and faced 𝗬𝗵 as 𝗵𝗲 stood behind your wings. Assuming 𝗵𝗲 already called Hawks, you glared at 𝗬𝗵. We already alerted Hawks. He'll be here soon, you dried-out piece of seaweed. You snapped as 𝗬𝗵 stopped about 60 feet from you. Oh, I think your bark is worse than your bite. 𝗬𝗵 grinned. We'll see about that. Your wings struggled but lifted 𝗵𝗵𝗧 out of harm's way. Grab on 𝗵𝗲. You whispered as you started to lunge at 𝗬𝗵, but he didn't move. 𝗵𝗲, who had grabbed onto your wings and shoulders, grabbed your wings and planted you on the ground under his feet, just a couple feet from 𝗬𝗵. You grunted beneath his feet, thrashing your wings in his grasp as you yelled. 𝗵𝗲, get off. Sorry, stray, he said as he looked down at you. Suddenly you stopped struggling as you saw 𝗬𝗵 and 𝗵𝗲 look at each other. You want her conscious and kicking or sedated? 𝗬𝗵 shrugged. Doesn't matter to me as long as she's alive. 𝗵𝗲 looked back at you as you stared at him in horror. You're the one person that is never going to get a chance to rise above me, Class 1A or not, he said with poison on his lips. You saw the sparks form around his hands, but since your wings were metal when they hardened, you were only electrocuted more. Your screams echoed loudly throughout the alleyway as 𝗵𝗲 didn't even bother to hold back. After a whole 3 seconds of electricity shooting throughout your body, exhausting you beyond belief, 𝗵𝗲 stopped and stepped off you. 𝗬𝗵 grabbed your wings, burning them slowly as you looked at him on the verge of unconsciousness already. Wincing at the pain as you weakly rubbed the ground trying to force yourself up. Once your feathers were burnt off, 𝗬𝗵 snapped your wings. Both of them in several places. You're gonna be a pretty little caged bird, 𝗬𝗵 said as he picked you up, your consciousness fading as you looked at 𝗵𝗲, whose grin was as wide as his ego. Yo, Shigaraki. 𝗬𝗵's voice filled the room as Shigaraki looked over his shoulder. What is it, 𝗬𝗵? He asked as he sipped on his drink. 𝗬𝗵 walked over and dropped you on the table, your unconscious limp body falling over the table. Electrocution marks burned into your skin as your hair draped over your face. Shigaraki looked at you, a grin growing on his face as he moved the hair out of your face. For a moment he paused as he stared at your face, his hand tracing over your face. He looked back at 𝗬𝗵 and smiled. Good job, 𝗬𝗵. Did you clip her wings? Shigaraki asked as his hand went through your hair. Yep. Broke them in every major bone I could find. They won't heal for a good couple months, so have fun with that, 𝗬𝗵 said as he threw you over his shoulder and looked at Shigaraki. Where am I putting her? Shigaraki stood up and led 𝗬𝗵 to a room with nothing but a bed, bathroom, TV, and desk. In here. Just tie her up and toss her in the floor. Shigaraki crossed his arms, leaning against the door as he watched 𝗬𝗵 restrain you. 𝐵LNDFLD her too. I don't want her to so much as see until I'm ready to grant that to her. Shigaraki spoke sternly as 𝗬𝗵𝗃 chuckled and did just as told. Blindfolding your eyes. You opened your eyes. For a moment you didn't register what was going on until you remembered 𝗬𝗵𝗃's face. Until your brain replayed his voice in your head calling you, pup. Until you remembered Minoma's face, the resentment, the anger, just before he used Kaminari's quirk to shock you. You sat up quickly, your wings stretching from shock and knocking things off until you yelled out in pain and leaned back against the bed. You tried to pull your arms out from behind you. They had been wrapped in rope from your upper arms to your wrists. You said, breathing heavily as you tried to look around underneath the 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃, but the room was too dark. Oh no 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 no, you whispered under heavy breaths as you tried to calm yourself down. Just about the time you stopped yourself from hyperventilating, you heard a chair scraping across the wood, getting closer and closer from outside the door. You held your breath, trying so hard not to move as you kept your head down. The door opened and you heard the chair plant right outside the door. You heard someone sit down in it as the pressure of their body caused the wood to squeak. You breathed slowly as you listened. You waited. Whoever it was, they were just staring at you, watching you. After a few minutes, you heard them stand and walk over to you. A hand lifted your chin up and another moved your hair from your face. You felt the floorboards move as the person squatted down. It was only when their whole hand cupped your face that you realized who it was through the texture of their hand. Plus you gasped and kicked at them, your wings aching as you screamed. Get off! Get the F off! Get away from me! Shigaraki's laugh filled the room as he swatted your feet away. Both his hands catching your thighs and holding them down tightly, and he got close to your ear. Your whole body shook as he spoke in a low tone. Fight all you want. No one knows where you are. No one cares. You're mine. Minoma, what the F did you do? Hawks yelled as he pushed Minoma to the ground. Tokiyami and Dark Shadow leaned against the wall behind him, both nervous as they took a deep breath. Maybe we should. Dark Shadow started to talk, but Hawks looked back at him with searing anger in his eyes. Never mind, he said as he retreated back to Tokiyami. I didn't do anything. I'm telling you that Electric Boy was seeing things. It wasn't me. Minoma yelled, lying through his teeth as Hawks grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and pulled him to his face. I swear to God. If 𝑦/N ends up dead because of you, I will become the one thing that keeps you up at night. Hawks snapped as he threw Minoma against the wall and held him there with his feathers. He looked at Tokiyami as he went towards Kaminari's hospital door. If he moves or tries to run, paralyze him, he said sternly before walking into the room. Inside the hospital room, Kaminari laid on his side, his burn wounds being treated with cream as Recovery Girl couldn't treat him as weak as he was now. Hawks walked in front of Kaminari, who was barely conscious, and sat down. Kaminari, when you found me after 𝑦/N's feathers pulled you to me and dropped you, you said Minoma's name and 𝗬𝗵𝗃's. Do you remember that? Hawks said softly. Kaminari nodded weakly. 𝗬𝗵𝗃 in an alley, he said behind an oxygen mask. Minoma touched my hair, he continued. And 𝑦/N pulled me away. Minoma shocked. 𝑦/N, he breathed out heavily as his eyes teared up. They have 𝐔𝐬𝐽 too. Hawks rubbed his face stressfully and looked at Kaminari. He stood up, gently placing a hand on his arm. You get some rest, buddy. Tell us more when you're healed. Kaminari nodded weakly as Hawks walked out of the room, one of his feathers opening the hospital window as he grabbed Minoma. Not speaking at all as he jumped from the window, loosely angrily holding Minoma as he screamed and flailed. Tokiyami, shocked at Hawks' actions, followed close behind with Dark Shadow's help. Where are we taking him? Hawks flung Minoma into the school water fountain. You are going to jail for a long time, Minoma. But first you're gonna tell me where 𝑦/N is. I don't know. Minoma yelled, sitting up in the fountain soaked to the bone. Like hell you don't. Do you know how much 𝑦/N has been through? Do you even care? You weren't there during the war. You didn't see what happened to Deku or 𝑦/N or Bakugo. Or me. Hawks yelled as he threw a stiffened feather into Minoma's leg. Tokiyami landed behind Hawks and grabbed him arm. Sir, you need to calm down. I can't. Hawks screamed as he lunged at 𝗵𝗲 and slammed him into the ground outside the fountain. You were there to protect her. Why? 𝗵𝗲 screamed. Why was I there to protect someone from Class 1A? They're supposed to be good enough to protect. The 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was cut off by Hawk's foot colliding with his jaw. This has nothing to do with high school. You could have gotten 𝗧𝗏 killed. Do you even understand that? Hawks grabbed 𝗵𝗲 by his shirt collar and pulled him up to his face. 𝗧𝗏 could be dead. God only know what she's went through if she is dead. Hawks punched 𝗵𝗲 and continued yelling. Shigaraki is a monster. Monster, 𝗵𝗲. He grabbed 𝗵𝗲's hair and pulled him up, staring him in the eyes behind UA High School as Principal Nizu and 2 other teachers ran out. She could be held for years. She could be raped, beaten, quirk taken, wings cut off. Do you even understand that? Mr. Hawks. Principal Nizu yelled as Tokiami and a teacher grabbed Hawks and pulled him away from 𝗵𝗲 as he screamed and yelled. You do not have authority to assault students no matter what they've done, Hawks. Principal Nizu yelled in his office. He got a student, my work/study, kidnapped. Hawks yelled back. Hawks I let her get kidnapped, Nizu. Hawks yelled, his voice breaking as he took his visor off and slammed it on the table. Tears falling on the back of his hand. I let her get kidnapped. I could have had her stay with me, and I didn't because the missions I was assigned to. Hawks knelt down, crying as he covered his face. I thought that it'd be too hard for her to be with me. It's been at least 2 days from what you can tell. Light shines into your room in the morning/days and you see it under your BLNDFLD. 2 days since Shigaraki last walked into the room. Your arms ached from being tied behind you so tightly. You wiggled and squirmed until you fell onto your side. Your wings didn't heal right so you could barely move them and they already hurt so bad from the burning. As you saw the light peer into your room again, you heard the door open and chair legs and feet appeared in your vision. Whoever it was grabbed you and picked you up, leaning you back against what you assumed was a bed. You heard the chair reposition. Probably to sit facing you. Alright, Y/H/N. Shigaraki's voice cut through the silence. You were almost happy to hear his voice, it had been so silent. You raised your head a bit to face where you thought he was. I have Jiro, Mina, Momo, and I've already killed my Netta. So, if you want the other 3 to live, listen very closely because I know you're awake. You swallowed hard as he grabbed your shirt collar and pulled you up to your knees, close to him as he sat in the chair. If you agree to this, I'll remove the restraints from your arms after I release them. You'll have just your wrists handcuffed behind you for the following 3 days. After that, the cuffs come off and the day after the BLNDFLD comes off. He said clearly and sternly as he let your shirt collar go, leaving you on your knees as you felt his weight. Were you sure this was Shigaraki? His hands were surprisingly soft as he put his hand gently but threateningly around your neck. If you run, try to fly, fight, scream. His voice got closer and closer until you could feel every word leave his mouth. I will cut your wings off. I will chain you to this room and I will do nothing but send pieces of you to your precious Deku until he can put the pieces back together like a jigsaw puzzle. Do you understand me? You swallowed, nodding slightly. He huffed, closing the gap a little more as he spoke a bit louder and with more authority. Speak. Do you understand me? You already saw what Dabi did to Kaminari just to get you here. You jumped a bit, nodding as you spoke. Yes, I understand, just let them go. Please. Shigaraki let you go. Standing up as you fell back against the bed, crying out in pain as your wings hit the bed. He grabbed the chair, walking to the door as it slid across the floor and opened the door. Wait, you're letting them go, right? You screamed, trying to get up only to fall back on your side. Shigaraki didn't talk as you heard the door begin to close. Shigaraki! You cried out as you heard the door close. Tears filling your eyes behind the BLNDFLD. Shigaraki closed the door to your room as you screamed his name. His face colored with a soft red hue as he sat the chair by your door and walked to the bar in the 2-story Victorian home he had practically stolen from an old frail man with Spinner and Dabi. Dabi saw his face as he entered the bar room, watching him sit down as he picked a whiskey glass up and looked over at him. Let the UA students go that you have. And hang that purple runt's body beside 𝐼𝐬𝐽 statue. Shigaraki said as he looked across the bar at the bottles of alcohol. You're just letting them go? 𝗬𝗵𝗵 asked as he sat one stool away from him. Why the change of heart? I thought we were gonna kill them like you said, then corner Deku and kill Dash. I know what I said, 𝗬𝗵𝗵. Shigaraki interrupted as he looked at him from the corner of his eye. We don't need them anymore. I have a new plan. What new plan? 𝗬𝗵𝗵 said as he turned to him. I'm gonna break her. Shigaraki stated as he drank the last of his whiskey. I am going to make this one thing mine, and I'm going to show Izuku Midoriya just how much he failed her as he did Bakugo and the rest of the world. Break her? 𝗬𝗵𝗵 said as he stood up. Is that why you had that schoolboy blush on your face when you walked in? You're falling for her. Shigaraki looked back at 𝗬𝗵𝗵, resentment in his eyes. This is not me going soft. Tuya Todoroki. This is me enjoying the full extent of being the villain I've always desired being. Okay, fine. How exactly are you going to break her? 𝗬𝗵𝗵 said, crossing him arms. At a snail's pace. Slow. Little by little. Right up until she's excited to see me. When she's excited to see the very thing that could have killed Izuku Midoriya. That's when she's broken. Shigaraki grinned widely as he looked at 𝗬𝗵𝗵. Now go release the brats. They're part of this plan too. 𝗬𝗵𝗵 sighed. Fine. I'll release them. He groaned as he walked out and closed the door rather loudly behind him. Day 1 the next day after Shigaraki had told you his terms, he walked into the room rather quickly. Metal jangling as he pushed you onto your stomach suddenly. You began to beg and ask what was wrong as he cuffed your wrists and cut the rope from your arms, giving you just a tiny bit more freedom. He pulled you to your feet and as he let you go you struggled to stand. You heard a TV flicker on as he walked behind you. Breaking news. A news reporter began as Shigaraki walked behind you, blindfolded you and forced you to watch the TV. On the screen, the reporter showed photos of Jiro, Momo, and Mina being wheeled into the hospital on stretchers. All looking pretty badly burned and beaten. The next scene showing Mina's blurred corpse laying at the foot of the All-Might statue. Yet again, heroes have failed to protect our children. Minoru Mineta was found burned to death by the villain revealed to be Enji Todoroki, the #1 hero, Endeavor's previously thought dead oldest son, Tuya Todoroki. Along with Minoru Mineta, Momo Yaoyorozu, Mina Ishido, and Kyukujiro were found unconscious and burned in different parts of the city surrounding UA Haishu. Shigaraki put your BLNDFLD back on and turned the TV down as you breathed heavily. Why you actually killed and hurt? You started to panic until Shigaraki's hand wrapped around your neck and backed you into a closet or maybe a dresser. If you PSS me off I will have them killed. Live on the news. Do you understand? Why yes. You said quickly as you heard Shigaraki snicker. I'll see you tomorrow. He said, letting you go. You heard the door to the room close as you leaned against the wardrobe or dresser. Plus day 2 you had felt your way around the room with what mobility and vision you had. You had a bed, dresser, TV, a small bathroom, a wardrobe with a few clothes in it. You laid uncomfortably on the bed that night after hearing the news, which was still playing because Shigaraki never turned it off even after turning it down and you were too blind to find the power button, and woke the next morning with an aggravated groan. You sat up and stretched the best you could. After walking around, rolling in your bed, and shaking your feathers out over the last 2 hours, the door finally started to open while you stood by the bathroom door. Shigaraki's footsteps filled the room as the door closed. You were about to say something but he grabbed your arm and sat you on the chair he had originally, you assumed, sat in every other time he came in. You felt a straw rest against your lips as he talked. It's a breakfast shake. You were going to question him but considering how hungry you were, you just sipped the drink in silence. You couldn't see Shigaraki on the other side of the BLNDFLD staring you up and down. Once you were done, you heard the cup set down. He walked around you and grabbed a hold of your wings, sending a searing pain down your back. You yelped. He huffed as he grabbed both wings firmly, making you squirm. That hurts, you whimpered softly under your breath, scared to upset him. After a moment, You felt the feather fall to the ground, leaving only a small amount as the bones in your wings healed themselves but seemed to stay small with no sign of regeneration. Better? Shigaraki asked with a sigh as he took his hands off your wings. You looked around, unsure where to turn your head. Yes, thank you, you said in an unsure voice. He said as you felt his cold hand touch the base of your wings. You arched you back away from his hand, a blush growing across your face from the sensitivity of the skin. Well then, he said softly under his breath behind you as he laughed silently. You grit your teeth as he walked back around you and stood in front of you. You heard him sit down on the bed just across from you. You felt his hands grab your shirt and pull you forward. You went to your feet for a moment before Shigaraki put a foot between yours as you stood and caused you to straddle him as he had you sit facing him. You were at a loss for conversation subjects as Shigaraki snickered. Shigaraki's lips touched your collarbone as you took a deep breath. Trying desperately to think of something to say but knowing nothing about the man other than his criminal history. His lips kissed up from your collarbone slowly. You leaned your head back, trying not to face him as he kissed your neck. He grinned into your skin as he pulled away. He pulled you off him and sat you on the bed beside him as he stood up. You felt his hand hold your chin up as your heart beat out of your chest. You swallowed as you felt his breaths against your lips. It was only when he was seconds away from kissing you that you were about to speak. Stop, you said firmly with a shaking voice as he pulled away. No fussing or forcing. Just moved away. I'll see you tomorrow, he said as you heard him turn and leave, kicking your feathers that had fallen from your wings out the door. When you heard the door close, you slumped forward and breathed out heavily. Plus, oh what the F, you whispered as you laid back on your bed. All Might walked up behind Deku as he sat on the top of a pile of debris. Young Midoriya. Deku stood up and started to walk down the pile of debris, trying to stay as far from everyone he cared about as possible. Too many people has died for him already. Young Midoriya. All Might yelled, freezing Deku in place at the bottom of the pile. Sliding down and struggling to keep his balance as Deku hit his face. All Might, Deku said silently as he stepped away from him. Kid. I had news and it's nothing good. All Might said as he grabbed his arm and made him hold his hand out, placing a brown paper bag with food inside in it. I can't be here for long, All Might. Shigaraki Mineta is dead. Momo is in critical condition. Jiro and Mina are in the hospital. Kaminari is just coming out of the critical burn unit and 𝐬/N was kidnapped by Dabi for Shigaraki. She's been missing for 13 days. All Might said quickly, not allowing Deku to interrupt as he grabbed his shoulders. Izuku looked up at All Might after taking a second to process the information. But I've stayed away from them. I left 𝐬/N, so why would Shigaraki? Oh god, All Might is 𝐬/N dead. Did I do this too? All Might shook Izuku hard. Izuku Midoriya. He yelled, making Izuku go quiet. This is not your fault. Day 3. Shigaraki walked in the next afternoon. You shot up in the bed, expecting your wings to be back to their full growth but being sorely mistaken. What did you do to my wings after you fixed them? You asked plainly as you heard him sit just across from you in that diamond chair again. I stopped them from regenerating. When I can trust you, I'll consider reactivating the regenerative cells in your body. Shigaraki stated as he took a deep breath. Oh okay, you said softly as you felt Shigaraki's weight transition the bed. You felt him crawl closer and closer to you until you realized he had crawled behind you. By the time you realized, Shigaraki's hand snaked its way up your spine. You didn't move or so much as twitch until his hand got to the bare base of your wings. You tried not to show any physical signs that the area was sensitive, but he grabbed onto your wings and rubbed in top bends of your wing, making you shiver a bit. You don't have any more hostages besides me, right? You asked, trying to change whatever subject was on his mind as he let go of your wings and moved your hair from your neck. Just you, he said plain as he got close to your neck, right at your shoulder, and pressed his lips against your skin as you swallowed hard. You haven't hurt. You moved your shoulders a bit, trying to ignore him and make conversation. Decorite. I haven't seen him, I haven't touched him. Shigaraki said softly as he kissed up your neck, his arms wrapping around you and pulled you back against him. Shigaraki. Yes. If you want me to stop, I'll stop. If you want me to leave, I'll leave. Shigaraki said, his head against yours. You're my small wing treasure. As long as you don't try to leave, I'll respect whatever you do want me to do or don't want me to do. You grew speechless as you heard him, losing you words so badly you didn't even speak when he uncuffed you. He took your hands into his and held them, but you couldn't see the grin plastered on his face as he spoke. Do you want to lay down? Nothing else, just lay down. He asked as he let go of one of your hands and moved the hair in your face behind your ear. You only realized after he asked just how tired and weak you actually were. And for some reason, after he reassured you he would be respectful, you felt safer around him. I would like to lay down, you said softly as he nodded and laid you on your side, him behind you with his arms wrapped protectively around your waist. I'll get your food tomorrow morning. The shake is all I could bring this morning, Shigaraki said as you closed your eyes, nodding a bit in his grasp. Day 5 you opened your eyes, Shigaraki nowhere to be found as you sat up in the bed. You looked around only then realizing that you no longer had your BLNDFLD on. The room you were in was pretty much as you expected. Small but not too small. There was a TV sitting on an entertainment center, a end table by your bed with a rose inside a vase, a dresser, and a desk you hadn't noticed until now. The window behind you above your bed got sunlight, but there was something over it to keep you from seeing out. You stood up, walking into the bathroom and looking at your small wings that Shigaraki had caused. None of the feathers would respond to you. They wouldn't stiffen or fall or detach. They were all too small to do anything. You stared at yourself in the mirror. Deku, where are you? You covered your face as you sighed. I miss you, Izuku, you groaned as you went to leave the bathroom. Just noticing Shigaraki as he stood leaning against the door of the bathroom. His white hair splayed carelessly on his head. A tight black t-shirt and black jeans complementing the muscles you had seen during the war. Izuku Midoriya, and you really were a thing, he said as he stared at you with his piercing red eyes. You practically slammed the door in his face after he finished talking. Knock. That was extremely creepy, crust face. And we are a thing. Me and Izuku been dating for months. You heard Shigaraki sigh and step back from the door, and you heard 3 soft knocks. You got slightly annoyed but couldn't help but smile. Catching yourself smiling, you smacked yourself. Villain. He is a villain. Not cute. Villain. Evil. I'm sorry, he said behind the door, catching you off guard as you stared at the door. I put breakfast on the desk if you want to come out and eat with me, he said softly. Your stomach growled as he mentioned food. You cussed your gut as you slowly opened the door but didn't look at him. Fine, you muttered as you moved past him and went towards the desk. 2 wooden chairs sitting side by side and 2 plates with eggs and bacon with 2 cups of juice sat on the table. You took a deep breath and sat down, taking a bite of the eggs as you tried not to even remotely seem happy about finally eating solid foods. Shigaraki sat by you after he clicked the TV remote and turned the TV on. After you were both done eating, you and Shigaraki watched TV while sitting on your bed. Occasionally he would make small moves towards you. A kiss on the cheek before he left the room, putting an arm around you, playing with your hair, touching your wings. The entire day was just full of small gestures, actions, and respected boundaries. It was weird. Day 6 afternoon, the day after slamming the bathroom door into Shigaraki's face, you watched news on Deku and his new vigilante acts. Shigaraki walked in, sitting by you on the bed. You know the heroes know that you were taken, Shigaraki said a bit silently. You glanced over at him. Deku doesn't. All Might follows him almost constantly. He knows. No, he doesn't. All Might has been on the news talking about you, Shigaraki said as he caught you off guard, pulling you into his lap. Deku knows, he said again as his lips pressed against the back of your neck. You darted off the bed and towards the TV, chills running all over your body. Can you please leave? I don't. You could barely speak as you watched the news. You weren't stuttering because you were upset at what Shigaraki said. Some part of you believed him. You were stuttering because you were fighting the fact that you couldn't understand why that when he touched you, kissed your cheek, or treated you well, nicely, you actually enjoyed it. You craved it. I love Izuku, you told yourself as Shigaraki walked up beside you, kissing your head as he walked towards the door. If you need me, yell my name. he said as he walked out. You sat on the bed as you watched the bad footage of Deku on the screen. Eventually, as night fell, you laid down and fell asleep. I shouldn't be meeting you here. I should be turning you UA or to the 𝐒𝐻𝐼𝐵. Hawks was cut off by Izuku throwing a piece of debris at his head. It was small and light like a baseball. Hawks paused, looked at Izuku and yelled. What was that for? You were muttering like I used to. Stop doing that and look at the bigger picture. Was it really Monoma? Was it Toga? Izuku asked as he sat down. No. I have someone following Toga closely. She hadn't made a move for months, and the day 𝑦/N was kidnapped, she was on the other side of Japan. Hawks sighed. Why would Mono dash? He says that he did it because if it weren't for the entirety of Class 1A, his favorite pro wouldn't have died in the war. Hawks crossed his arms. He never even mentioned a pro hero he liked. Ever. Izuku shook his head. Dude has mental issues. Oh, and you don't. Mister, I'm gonna leave my girlfriend while she's in a 𝐬𝐻𝐼𝐵. Do you have a crush on my girlfriend or something? Deku asked, staring Hawks down. What? No, Hawks stammers. Where was she last seen? Deku interrupted. The last sighting of her was about 5 miles west of her original kidnapping point. Hawks said as he covered his face with his hand, hiding a soft blush from Deku's comment. Alright, that's all I need to know. Deku said as he jumped away from the point Hawks and him were talking, making quick tracks to the area. As he searched that day, he took villain after villain and interrogated them before leaving them for the police. All the while unaware of news reporters following him and reporting his actions on live television. Day 8, you had spent the morning crying until Shigaraki walked in the room and sat by you. 𝑦/N, what? You said flatly, trying to hide your sadness. Are you okay? He asked as he rested a hand on your side. No, I'm not. You said as you pushed his hand off your side. I want to see Izuku. You want to see the hero that left you at the hospital while you were recovering. He didn't leave. He's just scared. You said, raising up and facing him but not looking him in the eyes. Shigaraki faced you, grabbed either side of your face and made you look at him. Izuku Midoriya would watch you burn to save the world. That's what heroes do. He ran his thumbs just under your eyes, wiping your tears as you looked into his piercing red eyes. I'm a villain, 𝑦/N. I would watch the world burn to save you. What? You said silently as you teared up a bit more. I would burn the world to the ground and watch it burn. Just to save you, 𝑦/N. Shigaraki said as he kissed your forehead and put his arms around you. You leaned into his chest as tears fell from your eyes, now silent as you sat your arms loosely around him. Over the last few days, you had regrettably grown closer to Shigaraki. You tried to play into his game, but at some point you slipped and you knew it was only a matter of time before he figured it out. The last 2 days he slept with you in your bed. Every day and every night he respected your boundaries, and every time you said no to an action or asked him to leave, you still couldn't look him in the eye. Not because he scared you, but simply because whenever you looked him in the eyes, you could feel yourself pulling farther and farther away from Izuku. You were falling for the man that hurt you. That changed Izuku. That killed people. And God, you hated yourself for it. You hated that you enjoyed spending time with him. That his laugh made you laugh. When you weren't fighting him, you enjoyed his company. When you weren't enemies, he respected you. He made you happy. You were blind to the fact you were still his hostage. Day 15, late evening. You and Shigaraki were watching a new movie he had brought home. When it ended, you crawled out of bed and went to the restroom, assuming Shigaraki had fallen asleep since he hadn't responded in a while. When you walked out, Shigaraki was standing just a few steps away from the bathroom door, his shirt laying on the floor as he turned to look at you. I thought you had fallen asleep, he said as he stretched. I thought you were asleep. You replied. A blush creeped across your face as you walked towards Shigaraki, keeping your head down as to avoid eye contact and anything else. Shigaraki's hand stopped you just as you were about to pass him, turning you towards him as he faced you. You know, it's been about a week and a half over that time I've noticed something about you, he said as his hand took your chin and made you look at him. You locked eyes with him as he smirked. What's that? you said softly as his other hand rested against your side, pulling you closer. You can't bear to look me in the eyes, he said quietly as he got closer to you. You swallowed, forcing yourself to pull away from him as he laughed a bit. You sat on the bed as he walked in front of you. I've never been very good at eye contact with anyone. It's a bad habit, you lied as he leaned down, his white hair falling in his face. Look at me, he said softly as his hand pressed against the tops of your legs, gently but firmly enough to keep you in place. You swallowed hard as you slowly looked up at him, eventually locking your eyes back with his. As you stayed in eye contact with him, he moved closer slowly, his lips getting closer and closer to yours. You could feel this breaths as he got closer. You tried to keep eye contact, but just as you closed your eyes, you felt Shigaraki's lips press against yours. You tried so hard not to enjoy the kiss, but you seemed to melt right into him as you placed your hands loosely on his shoulders, his hands moving off your legs as they moved under your knees and pulled your legs gently apart. Shigaraki's knees keeping your legs open as he laid you back on the bed, gently not breaking the kiss. One hand on your outer thigh and the other snaking under your shirt as you breathed heavily. I shouldn't be enjoying this so much. Your thoughts fought against your actions as Shigaraki broke the kiss and started kissing at your neck, moving to your collar as the hand that had been on your outer thigh began to unbutton your pajama shirt. The other hand at your lower back as you closed your eyes, your hands resting at his shoulders. Shigaraki didn't bother fully unbuttoning your shirt as he opened the top half he had unbuttoned and kissed down from your collar to the middle of your chest, his lips moving slowly on top of one of your melons and taking the peak of your 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏 into his mouth. You gripped onto his shoulders as he moved his tongue around the sensitive point, one hand now gripping the other 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏 as his free hand pushed your pants off your hips and gripped your outer thigh. You swallowed as he pulled his head up from your chest and looked at you, his hand at your thigh moving slowly between your legs. Say no, he whispered as you looked at him, a bright blush overtaking your face. Say no and I'll stop. That's all I have to do, is say no. Just no. Why is it so hard to say no? As your heart raced and you watched a smile grow across Shigaraki's face, you swallowed and stayed silent, his hand finding its way between your legs and to your cave, moving to your bud as you closed your eyes. I'm okay, I can, you said softly as you leaned your head back against the bed and took deep breaths. Shigaraki grinned wide as your eyes stayed closed, his fingers rubbing around the bud as you melted into the bed. Alright, he said softly as he continued his motions, his lips returning to your neck as you breathed heavily. The hand that wasn't between your legs took one of your hands and intertwined your fingers with his, holding your hand gently as Shigaraki kissed to your shoulder before pulling back and watching your expression. Just a few minutes later, Shigaraki pulled his body off yours, his hand retreating from between your legs as he unbuckled his belt. You opened your eyes, looking up at him as your legs laid limply on either side of his hips. Your face had to be bright red by this point as he pulled the belt out of the loops of his pants, unbuttoning and unzipping his pants as he pushed them off his hips, his member erected to its full length as he smiled at you. This I don't, my body is aching for him, but I miss Deku, I want Deku. You breathed hard as you felt the tip of Shigaraki's member press and rub against the entrance to your cave. Just as he barely got the head pressed against the entrance, you grabbed his arms. Saints, stop, Shigaraki, you said with a shaking voice. Shigaraki looked at you, smiling gently as he pulled his length away from your cave. Okay, we don't have to go farther, he said in a reassuring voice as he put his pants back on, keeping them low on his hips and then pulling your pants back up onto your hips and kissing you gently. You looked at him with a rather surprised look as he buttoned your shirt back up. You aren't upset? You asked in a worried voice. No, he said plain as he kissed your forehead. I would be upset if I did something to you and you hated me afterwards. You teared up a bit at his sweet words. See, can you you covered your eyes. Can you go get us some snacks and pop or water or something? You asked shyly. Of course, my little bird, he said, kissing your hand before getting off the bed and leaving the room. Once you heard the door close, you let out a loud groan and scream into your pillow. What is happening? You said into the pillow. I shouldn't like him. I should hate him. He's a villain, I'm a hero. I protect people from him. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 I would burn the world down to save you. Shigaraki's voice echoed in your head as you gripped the pillow in a hug and hid your face in it. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧. You whined into the pillow. Shigaraki had been respecting your boundaries every day since you refused him. There would be times where you would be kissing and pull away and Shigaraki wouldn't push any further and he'd simply kiss your head and ask if you were okay. Then afterwards he'd ask if you wanted him to stay. If you said yes, he would hold you in his arms all night unmoving and never making a move until the next day after bringing you breakfast. He had a passion to him when it came to you. He did anything you asked. It was refreshing but odd. Day 20y/n. Yeah. You looked up at Shigaraki from sitting in his lap. I'm never gonna leave you behind. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏. He said as he kissed your cheek and held you. What's wrong? You asked as you smiled up at him. I was just thinking, my little bird, Shigaraki said as he leaned his head on yours. Day 22 Shigaraki left after he brought you breakfast yesterday and you haven't seen him since. You were growing worried and anxious. Waking up alone with lonely you found yourself pacing around the room. Antsy. Aggravated. Where was he? Why wouldn't he tell you where he was? Hey! 𝗬𝗵𝗄𝐻 voice rang out as he slammed the door open. You turned and saw him, redirecting to the bathroom in a run but 𝗬𝗵𝗄𝐻 grabbed you before you could even make it to the door. Let me go! You screamed at the top of your lungs as you flapped your poor little feathers. No. You cried out as 𝗬𝗵𝗄𝐻 covered your mouth. He pinned you to the ground, hands still over your mouth as you screamed and kicked beneath him. As you looked towards the old window with curtained over it, you saw green flashes outside. Footsteps on the roof. Was that 𝗬𝗃? You screamed behind 𝗬𝗵𝗄𝐻's hand as he held you down. Shut up! He yelled in a whisper. Y/n. Deku's voice rang out. Twice. You cried behind 𝗬𝗵𝗄𝐻's hand until you heard Deku jump off the roof and leave. 𝗬𝗵𝗄𝐻 uncovered your mouth. Still on top of you as you screamed at the top of your lungs yet again, but not Deku's name. Not for Izuku Midoriya. Shigaraki. You cried loudly, hearing footsteps run up the stairs. 𝗬𝗵𝗄𝐻 was pulled off you, slamming into your desk and breaking it as Shigaraki pulled you up. You hit at him, not realizing it was him until he spoke and held you tightly. It's me. I'm right here. You're okay. You're fine. What happened? He asked. You were too distraught to respond. 𝗬𝗵𝗄𝐻, what did you do? I kept your precious little caged bird from being taken. You're welcome. 𝗬𝗵𝗄𝐻 yelled as he walked out and slammed the door behind him. You tried to speak but you were breathing too hard, not even registering fully about Deku searching for you. Hey, it's okay, Shigaraki said as he made you look up at him. You're okay. I'm right here. You started to cry again as you looked at him. Where were you? I didn't see you all day yesterday. I missed you. You whimpered as he kissed your head. I'm sorry I had to run some errands yesterday and I didn't get back until you were already asleep, he said as he sat on the bed and held you. I missed you. I was scared. I know. I'm sorry, Shigaraki said softly as he held you. Don't leave me again, please, you cried into his chest. I miss him every time he leaves. What is wrong with me? Shigaraki had slept with you every night since 𝗬𝗵𝗄𝐻 grabbed you and scared you. Every single night he held you in his arms, doing nothing more than protecting you as he slept without even realizing how much his arms around you meant to you. Eventually, you were getting aggravated with the small space of your room. Antsy, cramp stir crazy. You looked forward to seeing Shigaraki every time he came back. You looked forward to hearing his laugh and seeing him smile. Having him hold you and peck your cheek with little kisses randomly. He brought you books, he let you watch anything. But now you wanted more. You wanted space. You wanted to see the house he had you in. I need to get out of this room. It's so small and muggy. I've been in here too long. Shigaraki walked in with a takeout bag in his hand and 2 drinks. He sat them on the desk as you walked out of the bathroom. You wasted no time walking over to him and grabbing his hand as you looked at him as he stood up. Yes, little bird, he said as he tilted his head just slightly. Is there something wrong? I want to see the rest of the house, Shigaraki, you said softly. Seeing his hand love towards you, you closed your eyes and prepared for the worst but only felt his fingers run through your hair. All right, he said with a smile as you opened your eyes again. What? I said okay, Shigaraki chuckled. But Did you expect a no? I told you I'd never hurt you. The worst I'd do is tell you no or hold you if you were severely upset. He said as he took his face into his hand. 𝐒𝐽𝐽 smiled slightly. That was easier than expected. And Shigaraki kept his word, kept that agreement. No conditions. He took you all over the second floor, the floor you were on, that day. A week passed since he let you walk around the second floor. After about 3 days, he let you walk around freely on the second floor. You asked to go to the first floor. To the kitchen and living room. He agreed yet again. Only you couldn't go down without him. You didn't mind that. You had Brown attached to Shigaraki. Unhealthily so. Spinner and 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵. You said as you looked at them, Shigaraki standing behind you. 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗵. They live here as well on occasions. Is this the first time you're seeing them? Is 𝗬𝗲𝗵's rather rude handling? Shigaraki asked as he put an arm around you. Yeah, you said softly as 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵 scoffed a bit before sighing. Sorry. Thought you were being attacked. I heard the stomping upstairs and Shigaraki said to protect you so. He said half-assedly. It's okay. You replied as you scooted closer to Shigaraki in his arms. Spinner walked up to you and out his hand out. Glad to see Shigaraki found someone worth his time. Spinner smiled. Thanks, you said as you shook his hand. A couple days passed after you introduced yourself to 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵 and Spinner, or rather they introduced themselves to you. You overheard Spinner and 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵 talking about 𝐒𝐽𝐽𝗫 one night. They had saw him with Uraraka on a mission far from UA. On the other side of where you were originally captured. That night, you cried in the bathroom for a couple hours while Shigaraki slept in bed. Why would 𝐒𝐽𝗽𝗫 leave you? No one has even been searching for you. Not Hawks or UA. Why/N? You heard Shigaraki's groggy voice from the other side of the door. You flushed the toilet and walked out, trying to walk past Hun without speaking, but he caught your arms. Shigaraki, why/N? What's wrong? You'd been in there for a while, he said. He must have woken up after you got out of bed at some point. I'm okay. You sniffled as he turned you around and made you look at him despite your fussing. I'm okay. Why were you crying? He said as he saw your puffy eyes. You started to tear up again as you pulled your face away from him. No one is looking for me, you mumbled. Huh. Shigaraki led you to the bed and helped you lay down as he laid beside you, facing you. Go on, it's okay, I'm right here. He said as he moved the hair from your eyes. No one is looking for me. Monoma betrayed me. I'm lost and no one is looking for me, not even UA, and I worked so hard to getting you. You stifled your cries as he wrapped his arms around you. Shoo, it's okay, they don't know what they're missing. Little bird, you're my whole world. Shigaraki said as he kissed your head. We care more about you here than they ever would at you. I care more about you than Izuku Midoriya ever could. Plus, Shigaraki closed your bedroom door after he got you to sleep. Walking into the living room as 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵 and Spinner both spoke in unison. You're falling in love with her. Shigaraki thought on their words before looking at them. Maybe. Doubtful. But I might be. However, she's fallen hard. I just need to wait for her to say those 3 words first. Shigaraki snickered with a grin. Izuku Midoriya almost found her. 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵 said in a stern voice. She didn't even mention hearing him. I'd say she didn't even realize. Which means my plan is working. Shigaraki said as he sat down on the living room couch and grinned. You're gonna go soft if you fall for her. Spinner said as Shigaraki shook his head. Wrong. I'm not gonna go soft. I'm gonna toughen her up. He said as he waved Spinner to grab him a drink. If we don't kill her, she'll be our trump card. Izuku Midoriya will not be able to fight the woman he loves. Especially knowing how much he hurt her in the first place. He said as Spinner handed him a whiskey on the rocks. And what's worse for a woman than a broken heart? He said as he sipped his drink. 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵 sighed softly and shook his head. This better work. It will. How do you lose a whole person? Aizawa said as he looked at Hawks. I didn't lose him. He ran too fast. Hawks said, referring to Izuku. Which means you lost him. Aizawa said bluntly. I didn't lose him. Hawks said through gritted teeth, his arms crossed as he waited outside the conference room door to be called in. Do you know the definition of lost? What school did you graduate from? Aizawa asked, raising an eyebrow. Hawks looked at him in annoyance. I did not lose 𝐒𝐽𝐽𝐫. Hawks, Aizawa, we're ready for you. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said as he opened the door. Hawks went quiet with a grunt as he walked in first, Aizawa's mischievous grin not being visible to Hawks as he walked in behind him. Inside the room, All Might, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, Principal 𝗧𝗵𝗲, Hound Dog, and 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲 all sat at the conference table. Aizawa sat down and Hawks followed. Tell us again what 𝗧𝗵𝗲 told you, All Might, about young 𝗬/N, Principal 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said. Young Midoriya said that he was close to 𝗬/N. At least he believes he was. He said he thought he heard Dabi's voice coming from the second floor of a house. He also say indigo feather, remnants of feathers by the trash at this house. All Might said as he looked at everyone. So do we know if she's injured? Aizawa asked. We can assume by All Might's statement of what 𝗧𝗵𝗲 saw that 𝗬/N has suffered injury enough to keep her from escaping Shigaraki Tamura and his group. Principal 𝗧𝗵𝗲 replied. That being said, we need to take the necessary precautions. This is not to get out to the rest of the students. I've already had reports of the students trying to get to Midoriya, as dangerous as the outside world has become. We don't want any unnecessary injuries. Right. Everyone said in unison as Hawks stood up. Deku and I will plan a way to grab 𝗬/N when we have an opening. We need to have confirmation that 𝗬/N is within the home before evacuating the area. Hawks said as he sat back down after he finished. How big of an area should we evacuate? 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲 asked, his only thoughts of the destruction from the war caused by Shigaraki. A large area. As big of an area as possible. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said as he crossed his arms. If Shigaraki has gotten attached to the young hero, what do we do? Hound Dog said, referring to multiple possible outcomes. He knows how destructive his ability can be. If anything, we may want to hope that he has become attached to 𝗬/N. That may be the only way to get her away from him safely. Principal 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said with a heavy sigh. Moving on, Aizawa spoke impatiently, knowing the longer you were with the villains, the worse the situation could get. Who is scouting the house? And how long are we going to take to attack? I'll scout the house and confirm 𝗬/N's position for the next 2 days. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said as he looked at everyone. Hound Dog can join me and give us a solid confirmation with the smell of the area. If 𝗬/N's feathers are anywhere near the property, we'll know for sure she's in that house. Hound Dog nodded as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 finished his talking. It's reasonable to say that we will attack within 3 days of the confirmation from Hound Dog and 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Can you relay this information to Deku, All Might? Principal 𝗧𝗵𝗲 asked as he turned to All Might. Yes, of course. Thank you all so much. All Might said as he stood up. Then this meeting is done. Hound Dog 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Principal 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said as he stood up. Shigaraki started bringing you gifts as the days passed. Occasionally you would hear sirens or heroes going by in the streets. Even more so than you realized at times, though the distractions were becoming easier and easier to ignore the more you talked and spent time with Shigaraki. He bought you clothes, whole outfits, and patiently watched you try them on. You're a appealing little bird. 𝗬/N, my appealing little bird. Shigaraki said as you sat by him one night. I'm not yours yet, you said teasingly as Shigaraki looked down at you. What do you mean, not mine? He smiled. Well, you looked at him. All you've really done is kiss me. That's all you've really claimed, per se, you chuckled. Oh, Shigaraki smiled as he got his face close to yours. What are you saying then? I'm saying, well, you stammered as you locked eyes with him. Your heart pounding in your chest as you took a deep breath. A lot more goes into you claiming someone, you said as he grew a grin. I assume, you finished silently as he chuckled. I suppose you're right, Shigaraki said, kissing you softly as you went silent. You stared at Shigaraki for a few minutes as he watched the TV. Eventually, with a rising anxiousness, you made Shigaraki look at you and returned his kiss. For just a moment, Shigaraki was caught with surprise. It only took a couple seconds for Shigaraki to respond with a deeper kiss. He turned towards you on the bed, the kissing almost overwhelming as he wrapped his arms around you. For the first time, you weren't even a little scared. You were nervous, but not a scared nervous. An excited nervous. Your hands weren't sitting uncomfortably on your lap. Instead this time they were on either side of Shigaraki's neck, gently pulling his closer. It wasn't long after your kissing session began that you pulled away from him to catch your breath. He laughed a bit at this and just held you against him. He went silent as he looked at you before taking a hand and moving your hair behind your ear. "I'd love to make you my little bird," he said softly as you looked at him. You swallowed, an image of Deku's smile seeming to fade and disappearing as you looked into Shigaraki's eyes. "You can say N-." Shigaraki barely spoke before you interrupted him. "I'm okay with being your little bird," you said with a small laugh at the nickname. Shigaraki smiled and kissed your forehead. "So you understand what I'm asking and referring to, right?" he asked. "Yeah, I do," you nodded, your face burning with what shyness was left in your body in this moment. "Just making sure," Shigaraki said softly as he moved his hands under your shirt, wrapping his arms around you as he began to kiss you again. You tried to catch your breath in between each kiss, not being able to hold in small giggles as he picked you up and sat you on the bed. He stood up and pulled away from you, your hands chasing his retreating arms as he smiled at you. You sat up and watched him as he took his shirt off in a rather slow manner, just to tease you. He grinned at you as you covered your nose and mouth. "That's unreasonably hot." He laughed as he got close to you and moved your hands from your face, holding your hands gently, moving you back on the bed as he kissed you softly. Your heart was pounding out of your chest. You could barely breathe, but none of it was unwelcomed. You were excited. Shigaraki removed your shirt, gently being careful not to hurt your wings as you took a deep breath. Your face tomato red as he chuckled softly over you. "You're gorgeous, Y/N. Every bit of you. Every feather, every blush, every inch of you," he said, getting closer and closer to you, going to your neck and kissing it softly. You closed your eyes, enjoying the moment as Shigaraki's knees moved between your legs and his hands carefully and gently removed your pants and underwear. You moved your hands to Shigaraki's shoulders as you heard your pants hit the floor behind him, pulling him to you and kissing him deeply as his hands ran up your thighs too, your hips to your sides. His hands explored every part of you as he leaned over you. Your breathing hitched, becoming unsteady and excited as he pulled away from you and moved his lips back to your neck. One of Shigaraki's hands moved between your legs, once again finding your bud and sending bursts of pleasure throughout your body. You breathed heavily as his fingers moved, swallowing hard as his free hand moved softly against your spine, sending chills through your body. "Sure, Shigaraki," you breathed out softly into the air as you leaned your hair back, your hands running through his hair and your arms laying over his shoulders. "Do you want me to stop?" Shigaraki asked close to your ears as his fingers moved faster. "No." You breathed out hard as your legs squirmed with pleasure. "Don't stop." Shigaraki smiled into your neck as his hand at your spine moved to your side and held you gently. He began to kiss you again as you breathed hard in the kiss. Eventually, your back arched and you found yourself breathing so hard you thought you might pass out. "Do you want to keep going, Y/N?" Shigaraki asked as he raised up and looked at you. You swallowed hard, recovering from the pleasure that had rushed through your body. "We can th." You pulled Shigaraki back into a kiss before he could continue, one hand grabbing his jeans and undoing them as he chuckled in the kiss. When you pulled away from him, you smiled softly. "I love that you're asking, but I think right now I'm more in love with the idea of being your little bird, so," you put your hands against his chest as he smiled at you. "Okay, Y/N, he grinned as he raised up on his knees and slipped out of his jeans and boxers, pushing them into the floor as he grabbed your hips and pulled you close to him, his member visible from the position you were in and standing tall. You took a deep breath as you looked up at Shigaraki and smiled. He leaned down and kissed you passionately as he moved his hips back and lined his member up with your entrance. Anxiousness filled your body as he took your hands and intertwined your fingers, pressing your hands into the bed as he pushed his member slowly and carefully into you. You pulled away from the kiss and breathed out heavily as your felt hung inside you, watching him as your legs crossed behind his back, bringing him closer to you. Shigaraki's hips began to move slowly, your breathing growing heavier as you felt his members' movements. "Shigaraki," you breathed out as he kissed the side of your neck, pulling away to look down at you as he smiled. "Yes." He huffed out as you felt pleasure shooting throughout your body. I love dash. You were cut short in your blissful moment as the bedroom door burst open. Shigaraki. We have dash. Spinner's words were cut short as Shigaraki looked back at Hun with what you were assuming was the most pissed-off look humanity has ever witnessed. Shigaraki let go of your hands and grabbed the blanket beside both of you, throwing it over his shoulders. Your face went from a blissful expression to shocked as you pulled your hands over your chest as you looked at Spinner. Your face tomato red yet again. Spinner connected the dots pressed quick, but he never got a look at either of you naked as Shigaraki held the blanket up, keeping Spinner from looking at you. Speak. Before I decay you. Shigaraki said in anger as he stared Spinner down. I need to talk to you downstairs. It's urgent. I'll leave so you can get downstairs. I am so sorry, he said, pleading for his life in those last few words as he closed the door. it. Shigaraki huffed as he got off you and covered you up. Sorry, little bird. I'll be back and we can continue if you're not asleep, he said as he kissed you softly and got dressed. You couldn't speak from the embarrassment rushing through your body. You watched him leave as you covered your face with the blanket and closed your legs tight. feet. You groaned into the blankets. You put on an oversized hoodie that Shigaraki had brought you a few days ago and a pair of sweatpants. That's it. You sat on the bed, waiting for him to come back in. The more time that went by, the more impatient you became. Eventually, after what felt like an hour passed, you got up and walked to the door, going to open it until the door burst open. Downstairs you heard Shigaraki screaming for you to leave, but in front of you, Deku stood in his torn-up suit. You stepped back, not having expected that the one night you finally forgot about Deku, the one night you were just admitting to yourself that you were falling in love with Shigaraki, would be the very night that Midoriya would just decide to save you. Izuku. You said softly as Deku reached out towards you, but you stepped back. Y/N. Come with me. We need to go, he said as he looked at you, concern in his eyes and rage replacing that concern as he saw your clothes on the floor. Did he? You stood there stunned as you swallowed. Young Midoriya. Grab her and get out of there. Snipe and Hound Dog are struggling to keep Shigaraki and the others down. You heard All Might's voice from Deku's mask. You could react fast enough nor decide quick enough. You wanted to tell Deku to leave, but the moment he grabbed you and picked you up, you lost your words. He ran downstairs using his quirk to quicken his movements as he passed Shigaraki, Dabi, Spinner, and some other villains. You and Shigaraki locked eyes, and for that moment you saw Shigaraki fight with every ounce of strength he had to try and grab you. But Deku was too fast. Before you knew it, Deku was sitting you on a hospital bed and you were surrounded by doctors and nurses. Deku was ushered out of the room and you were being searched, examined, questioned. Overwhelmed. Her clothes were on the diamond ground. All Might. Izuku screamed. Young Midoriya, I'm Sue Dash. All Might tried to calm Izuku down, but to no avail. He kicked multiple trees down in his rage as tears fell from his eyes. I shouldn't have left. I shouldn't have let Y/N, he yelled, sobbing as he leaned on the tree stump. All Might sighed, walking up to Izuku as he put a hand on his shoulder. Young Midoriya, there is every possibility that she was just changing clothes. It's unlikely given Shigaraki's past criminal records that he would resort to that kind of violence. He wants to hurt me. All Might. Y/N was in that position because of me. If I had just stayed and protected her, Izuku cried as All Might hugged him. We'll know more in the coming days, young Midoriya. Do not give up hope just yet. I'm sure Y/N is okay, he reassured Izuku as he sobbed into his shoulder. Plus, in a new safe house, Shigaraki sat and spun his drink around in the glass. Thinking. Strategizing. What's our next move, Shigaraki? That girl will tell them everything about you. Spinner was cut off as Shigaraki stared daggers into him. She isn't going to tell anyone anything. She's in love with me just as much as I'm in love with her in this very moment. When the time is right, she'll return, Shigaraki said as he sipped his drink. How are you so sure? Dabi asked as he tended to a wounded villain. I'm sure because Shigaraki paused for a moment before grinning. Because we didn't get to go nearly as far as Y/N wanted to go. You seem pretty sure of yourself. Dabi scoffed. It's already snowballing, 𝗬𝗵𝗲. I saw it in Izuku's face when he left with her. Why do you think I made sure we got away as quickly as we did after she was gone? It's all a part of the plan. Except for being a bit dehydrated and otherwise combative, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 seems to be doing fine, Izuku. Your doctor spoke as Izuku sat at your bedside. You could only stare at the ceiling, unsure of your feelings about being here and being by Izuku. So she's healthy? Izuku asked, still obviously concerned for you despite the ankle bracelet he probably should have been more concerned about. Yes. Like, completely healthy. Not even hurt a little bit. She was with him. Did you dash? Izuku began to ramble until the doctor interrupted him. Everything looks perfect again except for the mild dehydration and her being unresponsive and combative with staff O and her wings which aren't regenerating, but there are still lab tests coming in. The doctor was going to continue speaking until Izuku stood up and walked up to him. He had a bad habit of whispering like a bullhorn. What about the Izuku cleared his throat? The kit? He asked in more of a statement than a question. You stared out the window of the hospital room, overlooking crowds and crowds of angry people. Rightfully so. She refused that. Not that I should or could tell you the results of something like that if she didn't refuse. The doctor replied before giving Izuku a goodbye and walking out the door. Izuku sighed, looking back at you and frowning. You looked over at him as he walked over and sat by your bedside. You looked at him and some part of your still had a flutter of affection for his goofy face, but I would burn the world to save you. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, sorry, Izuku said softly as he looked down and held your hand in his. You gave a questioning noise as you watched him. I should have stayed at the hospital until you woke up. Instead you stopped Izuku from talking by pushing his head back. Smiling at him softly. Izuku, you were panicking, that was our first war. No one expected you to react in their perfect image. You reassured him as you scooted over in the hospital bed and moved the covers. Plus he looked at the bed before reluctantly crawling in beside you. You put your arms around him and cuddled against him. It felt good to hold him after so long. I'm still sorry. I missed you. I didn't even stop when you chased me down, Izuku Midoriya, stop talking and just let me enjoy holding on to you. You said in a sigh as you leaned your head on his chest, his hand running through your hair as you closed your eyes. So about the ankle bracelet. You started out as Izuku looked up at you from eating some ramen from the hospital cafeteria. The hospital still had you under observation. You'd be free for about 3 days now. Every night you slept you dreamed of Shigaraki or something to do with Shigaraki, and it was maddening. Especially sitting in this small room with nothing to do. Oh, Izuku looked at the ankle bracelet as he sipped the juice in his ramen. They said I could go 4 places: school, dorms, hospital, and mom's house. He scratched his head as he looked at you. Not my place. You frowned as he laughed. You live in the dorms now, remember? I even remember that. Izuku smiled as you gasped. Wait, really? No way. When? You smiled wide and excited. A concerned look growing on Izuku's face before you cut the act and started laughing. I'm joking. I remember. You look so worried, Izuku. You chuckled. He sighed and laughed a bit before taking a deep breath. I don't know why that scared me. You had no bodily injuries. You worry that bad about me? You smiled softly at him as he peeled an apple for you at your bedside that he had put aside after bringing the ramen up to share with you. Of course I do, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. I have since the day I met you. Izuku smiled at you as took a deep breath. Almost a sigh of relief hearing that. I'd burn the world down to save you, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Shigaraki's voice still echoed in your head. You felt his hands on your daydreaming as you stared off into space until Izuku touched your hand. 𝗧𝗵𝗲. You looked over at Izuku. Yeah. He sat the peeled apple on your bedside and smiled at you. Here's the apple, what do you want to do once you're released from the hospital? You laughed as Izuku stared at you. For a few seconds all you can do is laugh until you finally calm down enough to speak. Izuku, you have an ankle bracelet on, all we're gonna be able to do is sit and watch movies. You cackled as Izuku laughed with you. We can always walk around UA. He chuckled as he stood up and kissed your forehead. Shigaraki walked up to you, wasting no time as he put his hands on your hips and pulled you close to him, his lips locking against yours in a passionate kiss. Your arms went around his neck, loosely and lovingly. You were laid back on a bed as Shigaraki's hands slide up and under your shirt, holding you tightly against him. 𝑦/N wake up, Shigaraki whispered in your ear. 𝑦/N. Izuku shook you awake as you jerked and sat up. What? You looked at Izuku as he tilted his head. Are you okay? You were tossing and turning in your sleep. He sat at the edge of the dorm bed, your bed. You had gotten released from the hospital only 2 days ago, and it didn't matter where you looked or what you talked about, you couldn't stop thinking of Shigaraki. Dreaming, hearing, thinking about him. Were you having a nightmare? Izuku asked cautiously. No, you rubbed your neck nervously. I don't know, I can't even remember the dream. Izuku kissed your forehead as he put his arms around you. It's gonna be okay. I'm here now. He can't hurt you anymore. You returned the hug as you leaned your head against Izuku's shoulder. I missed you so much, you said with a mildly relieved sigh.